Hello, and welcome to the Carnegie Slate demo series. My name is Ryan Simpson, and I am a Slate implementation strategist with the Slate optimization team. Today we will be covering modernizing Reader by using the workflow editor. We will start with the key features of the workflow editor, where I'll be describing some of the functionality that is going to make building workflows easier than ever. After that, we'll talk through the setup strategy. We know that modifying the Reader process can be intimidating, but with the right strategy, you'll be able to use the workflow editor to level up your processes. Finally, we'll talk through some additional functionality, including a brand new material type. The workflow editor has some key features that replace legacy functionality and make the entire setup process so much easier. The first of these features is a consolidated workflow interface. The workflow editor takes what used to be 4 screens, each with individually grouped and ordered items such as bins, forms, and materials, and puts all of that functionality into a single tab screen. Each tab corresponds to the objects that will be contained there, and the order of the tabs indicates our order of operations. When we click into these tabs, we see our second key feature, drag and drop setup. When we are building out the bin structure, all we have to do is drag out each component. You begin with the bin group, then you add your columns, and finally you drag out your bins. Each bin can be moved from column to column or moved within the order just by using your mouse. Slate no longer requires you to set the group, column, or order for each bin. Instead, saving that information when you drag the bin in the spot you'd like it to be. This functionality also applies to materials. On the Reader Tabs tab, we can start by dragging in the tab group, such as a material group or a link to a portal or other external website. Once you have created your tab group, simply click the material icon to open the tab material interface. Here we can see various objects we could add to the tab. We can add record data, as in this example, to include our application PDF. Those of you who have built out Reader tab groups and materials in the past will love how easy it is to manipulate objects using this interface. Our third key feature is segmented security. Traditionally, granting the reader permission meant that unless you set up very robust bin-level security, readers could see every bin in your group. The workflow editor allows you to set full view security at the workflow level, meaning you save time and effort by simply splitting these workflows up and putting them behind their own custom permissions. It is important to note that in order to view the workflows you create, you will need to add these custom permissions to the roles or population permissions for your existing users. Until you do that, the workflow will be completely inaccessible to your readers. Let's talk about setup strategy. I mentioned at the top of the video that setup and modification of the reader process can be intimidating, but with a few tricks and some careful planning, we can build or rebuild our processes without interrupting the current application flow. We have 4 themes to our setup strategy. First, we'll want to recreate, not replicate. We'll ask ourselves some questions, such as, what works about your reader? What needs improvement? We'll use this time for process improvement as well as migration. Our second strategy is sometimes more is okay. I've mentioned before that in the workflow editor, its security setup, sometimes more workflows are better than fewer. Break out workflows into individual processes. If you have processes that have their own set of bins but was previously just a group in Reader, now is the time to break it out into its own workflow. You might ask, though, if I have more workflows, isn't maintenance going to be a lot harder? In general, the answer here is no. When we break out our processes into separate workflows, we reduce the complexity of the bin order, tab grouping, and review form structure. The new interface further simplifies maintenance, making tasks such as adding in a new bin or reordering your materials much easier. Third, work in the background. The amazing thing about the workflow editor is that it is an entirely separate component from the traditional reader setup. This means until you turn on the workflow and assign security, you can work in the background completely invisible to your average Slate user. You can build out your bin structure using the drag and drop interface, but more importantly, you can test bin movement rules and assignments without bothering files in your current reader. Each workflow will have its own rule tab, part of the new interface that consolidates all of our functionality. Building in this tab allows you to easily group your rules into exclusivity groups and run check logic on individual files to ensure proper rule functionality. Remember, because a file can be in different places in different workflows, and your new rules will only be looking at this workflow, you can test them without modifying or impacting your current reader process. Finally, seamless transitions. You've built out a brand new workflow, customized all of your bins, tabs, rules, and forms. Your testing has gone great and everything is ready for action. But how do you actually make the swap? You have to have a plan. Start by building out queries for your current bin structure. For each bin that exists in your current workflow, you'll want to use this query to add the same set of files to your new bins. If there isn't a one-to-one correspondence, you may have to do some manual cleanup afterward. This process should happen when there's a slow period in reading, either between read cycles or maybe at the end of a week. Once you have your application files in the correct bins in the new workflow, all you have to do is add the permissions you've created to the appropriate roles for your users. You can then deactivate the various components of the original reader workflow so that when your staff return to work, the transition has been completed seamlessly without them ever knowing. Finally, let's briefly talk about some additional functionality gained in the workflow editor. The first of these new functionalities is data containers. Data containers are a new type of material that can be accessed in the workflow editor. Data containers are customizable versions of the auto PDF functionality that drives the application PDF view. If your institution has begun replacing your standard Slate pages with Slate-hosted application pages, you'll want to build these out to display any data gathered in widgets. For example, if you've replaced the standard academic history page with a custom page instead, you'll need to build out a data container like this one to show the academic history information. Once built, the output will look quite familiar, but instead of Slate picking the exports and order of the page, you've defined it yourself. Two other improved and new functionalities are the way in which we change the look and feel of Reader. Shared views replaces the need to build out queries that live in a special folder to allow for different columns or exports in your Reader view. Now, when you go to the Reader view tab, you can create a shared view. In this simple interface, you will be able to add exports, filter the files, and save. This makes it much easier to create custom views for users, either by setting the view as a default or by assigning a view based on permissions. You can easily pin, set defaults, or make all views accessible to every user. And because we're using custom permissions, we can make sure that our users have only the access to use the views, not to modify them. Our last bit of functionality is probably something most people never thought to modify. It's now much easier to change the drop-down that appears when you click on the applicant file name in the top left of Reader. Previously, this dashboard had to be modified outside of the Reader using a special query. Now all you have to do is click Edit, add your merge fields, and customize the view. Once you're also able to access some of the harder to find options here, such as enabling or disabling the ability for readers to download PDFs or to view decision or other application information. Once again, my name is Ryan Simpson, and I'd like to thank you so much for spending some of your day with me as we explored the workflow editor and all the ways you can use it to level up your Reader process. I hope you'll come back for more of our Slate Demo Series videos and would love to work with you and your colleagues on these and many more projects in the future. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, my email is rsimpson@carnegiehighered.com. Thank you and have a great day.